Good morning. Happy Thursday. And we're talking about money. Ho! Show me the money. So, good morning. So, how do you create your money machine? Well, first of all, let's remember how we're supposed to get there. Number one, spend less than you make. Remember the whole approach? You got to start putting yourself in a position where you can start saving money and getting it into the money machine that you're going to create. What is financial independence? So financial independence is having your investments make more money than you make from your job. That's usually most people's definition of financial independence. So how many of you are close to that? How many does your investments generate more income than what you make where you work? My guess is not very many. And one of the reasons is because the main investment vehicle that everybody uses is 401ks. 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, whatever, they're all the same. And these are fine investment vehicles. There's nothing wrong with them except that they don't generate any revenue. What they do is they create a pile of money that you look at hoping that you're going to have sometime in the future. Now, it's a good idea to have that. I mean, it's a good idea to have that safety net and that pile of money for the future. But what you want with a money machine is you want something that generates revenue, and you want that revenue to exceed yours. Now, when you first start out to figure out what that amount of money is that it needs to generate, you should start out by looking at your basic bills. And so this is our next step. Look at your mortgage, look at insurance, look at utilities, look at food, and look at a basic car. Okay, look at the necessities. These are the things that if everything falls apart, you absolutely need. Take away travel, take away any type of extras. All right? Food, home, basic utilities, vehicle, insurance. Take a look at those. Sit down, look at your budget, and actually just add up those numbers. And what you're typically going to find out is that that number actually isn't all that much. And all you need is an investment vehicle that generates that number a month, and you've pretty much reached financial independence. Once you look at that goal becomes a lot more attainable. And, real estate is a lovely way to do that, but it's not the only way to do that. But it's certainly a way to do that you can see the revenue coming quickly. But again, you got to pick the area that you're looking for. So if you want whatever type investment vehicle that you want to deal with, it's got to be something that you're comfortable with. So some people are comfortable with spending a lot of time and energy and research in the stock market and making that their main investment vehicle. Now, depending upon who you talk to, you can decide whether or not this is a good idea. So we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But we start out, what's your basic budget? What are your bare minimum costs? And then you start spending less than you make. And the bare minimum costs are what you want your investment vehicle to generate on a monthly basis, because then that creates financial independence. So that if everything falls apart like it did this past spring, your investments will generate enough revenue so that you can pay for your basic bills and you can move forward. It also allows a tremendous amount of freedom. If you want to take the time to write a book, if you want to take the time to travel, if you've got something that can generate revenue, then it is amazing how much freer you can be in terms of making your decisions. So one of the things I did is personal injury cases, you can do these things called structured settlements. And they're annuities, but they're annuities before annuities got a bad name. Annuities are a bad idea now, but this is an old idea of an annuity. And essentially, for the plaintiff, for the person receiving money, they can have their money come to them in the form of an investment vehicle that makes it so that, because the money in a PI case is tax-free, it makes it so that the gain on all of that money in that investment vehicle is also tax-free to them, and they receive it over a period of time. Essentially what happens is the insurance company that they're settling with buys an annuity and assigns it to them, so then it gives them their money guaranteed plus interest, not a huge amount of interest, but it still gets interest over time, and then they don't have to pay taxes on it. So one of the things I did is we could do that with part of our fees. Now, we still have to pay taxes on it, but we don't pay taxes on it till down the road. So I would get to a certain point every year when I was younger, and then every PI case that I did, I would take my fee, and I would get to my baseline, and I would take my fee and then throw it out into the future. So that's how I get checks monthly now, is because I'm getting paid on cases that I settled back in the late 90s and in the early 2000s. Now that's a vehicle that's only available to me, but that's one of those creative ways to make sure that you're getting income down the road that allows you the ability then to make different decisions. And if I'm working and I'm doing fine, well, then that goes into my money machine, right? But if everything fell apart, then I had the opportunity to have that income when I needed it. So when I started my own law practice 4 years ago, I didn't take any income out of my law practice for a year. That gave me a lot of flexibility. That gave me the ability to take only the cases that I wanted to, the types of cases that I wanted to, and it gave me that flexibility. So you got to look for other vehicles than just the basic ones, because there's lots of vehicles out there that are ways to make money and have it pay you over time, and then give you the opportunity to be financially independent. And that's really what we're looking for, is a money machine that creates financial independence. So number one, we got to know what that is. So first of all, what's your bare minimum? How much money do you need to make? And how much money are you going to need in order to generate that money based upon the vehicle that you pick in order to do that? And that's going to be your homework when you're done with today, and then we're going to talk about tomorrow. Now, when you talk about money machines, like I said, lots of people talk about real estate. And if you talk to the real estate guys, Grant Cardone is a great one to listen to. He's an amazing guy to listen to. What I love listening to about Grant is Grant shows you that energy that's necessary in order to achieve the types of things that he's trying to achieve on a high scale. He vibrates at that energy, and I think that that's one of his greatest assets that he brings to the people that listen to him. But he also has a lot of great knowledge with regards to real estate. But if you listen to Grant, if you listen to Robert Kiyosaki, that's the guy that did the Think and Grow Rich, they'll tell you never to go in the stock market, that you should only go into real estate. Well, again, you make your choice here. I think it's a good idea to get into everything. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have balance. Obviously I'm a Tony Robbins follower, clearly, since that's, the guy that I mainly talk about. We talk about buckets. We talk about having different investments in your buckets and then how you divide that all up. That's another one that I'll share with you. What we like to do in that investment method is you've got a bucket that's precious metals, a bucket that's stocks, a bucket that's whatever else you decide to do. Real estate would be a good one. And then a bucket that's bonds and, corporate debt if you get into something like that. Figure out what your percentages are for each of those buckets. And then at the end of each year, even up those percentages. If you read Money Mastering the Game, that is the secret that Tony Robbins got out of Ray Dalio, probably the best investor ever, probably better than Warren Buffett. That's the secret that Tony Robbins got out of Ray Dalio that nobody else could get, is that's what he did. So think about how this works. So you've got, whatever, 30% in stocks, 40% in real estate. That's probably too low. 30% in each of those, and then 20% in bonds, and then 20% in precious metals. Probably that's not a good distribution. You'd probably want to do a little bit higher in the first two. But let's say you do that, okay? So then you go through a year, and it's a bad year in the stock market, which means it ends up being a good year in precious metals. So at the end of the year, your stock market portfolio went from 30% to 20%, and your precious metals went from 20% to 30%. So now what do you have to do? Well, you have to even up your buckets. So it forces you to sell high and buy low, which is exactly what you want to do. So if at the end of the year you look and your buckets are uneven, then you're like, all right, well, I got to sell some precious metals and I got to buy some stocks. It's an amazingly brilliant approach, and that's an approach that I've adopted ever since I learned of it. The buckets works incredibly well because it forces you to be disciplined. Now, if you want to invest in the stock market, there's a million books out there to show you how to do that, from Jim Cramer's series of books that he did on investing, which are all great, to the basics about beating the Dow, which is a book that was written, 30, 40 years ago, that's still wonderful on how to do it. You can do it yourself. You can also do it with money managers. Personally, I've done it myself for years and years and years, and I studied it for years and years and years, and I think hiring the professionals is the way to go, quite honestly. And I had some success doing it, but it's Robert Kiyosaki will tell you that it's a rigged game and that the money is fake money. And he goes on and on and on about that. As he's gotten older, he's kind of become a grumpy guy. Well, I think it is kind of a rigged game. If XYZ of hedge fund manager decides he wants to blow up other hedge fund manager and so he dumps the stock just because, you can get caught in the middle of that. And is the money fake money? Sure, because we went off the gold standard in 1970. And so our money isn't real in the sense that it's backed by a precious metal. And the government has just recently printed $5 trillion, and they don't even print money anymore. They just hit a button on a computer and we've got more money. But money is a social contract. That's the thing that Robert's saying, that isn't quite accurate. We all just agree that this is worth something. That's what money is. It's a social contract. So, in a sense, we would have to all of a sudden agree that money's no longer money. That could happen, but it seems unlikely. And when the world falls apart, everybody wants to own our currency. So I think saying that you're not going to invest in the stock market at all doesn't really make a ton of sense. I think doing it with professionals does make sense, not because they're necessarily going to do a better job than you of picking individual stocks. It's that they're going to be more disciplined, and they're on the inside. They're investing on the inside. Now, do they overcharge you? Yeah, they overcharge you. So you do your best to cut fees. You do your best to find somebody who's a fiduciary, but the overcharging is probably worth it. Let's face it, the investment vehicles of all the trust departments of Bank of America and all of that, there's 4 guys sitting on Wall Street that figure out all of those investment models. And, they're not bad. They work over time. And if you want to do a private company, that's okay too. You just got to remember that they're not FDIC insured. The problem with having private companies invest your money is they're not too big to fail and they're not backed by the government. So again, if the world falls apart, that could all fall apart. This is part of the reason that you want to do the buckets. So you kind of got to decide where it is that you want to go. I think just saying I'm never going to invest in the stock market probably isn't the smartest idea, because it is a great investment vehicle. But at the same time, saying the only thing that I'm going to have is an IRA, well, that's great for some time when you're 70 or 80, but it doesn't generate any cash flow now. So spend less than you make and then start your money machine. And you got to think about who are you and where do you want to be? Do you want to be in real estate? Do you not want to be in real estate? Do you want to be in cryptocurrency? Do you want to be in the stock market? Do you want to be in all of these things? And if you want to be in all of these things, do you want to be an active investor or do you want to be a passive investor? Because you could be in all of those things and being passive in all of them. So we start out by doing what? We pay ourselves first, right? That's how we spend less than we make. We pay ourselves first and we start creating the money in our money machine. As we do that, we pick these different vehicles that we want to take a look at and how we want to invest in them. Do we want to be in stocks? Do we want to be in real estate? You absolutely want to be in precious metals. And then you take a look and say, how is it that I want to do that? Do I want to be an active investor or do I want to be a passive investor? If you want to be an active investor, then you read the books and you figure out how you're going to manage your money in the stock market. If you want to be a passive investor, then you try and go find the best fiduciary that you can. You want somebody with a long track record, and you want somebody that is associated with some sort of large bank so that they're too big to fail, so that if the market collapses, then that bank will get backed by the United States government and it won't fall apart, in my opinion. Again, now there's lots of people that have all their money in these private investment companies, and they do great. I mean, there's some of them that do really, really well. My worry is, and I didn't invent this, when I started having clients that were receiving significant sums of money, I went to people who were multimillionaires and said, what should my advice to these people be? And all of them said the same thing. They got to be in banks that are too big to fail. After 2008, 2009, you got to be in banks that are too big to fail. Otherwise, it's just too much of a risk. If you want to be in real estate, then you got to decide, am I an active investor or a passive investor? And if I want to be in real estate as an active investor, how do I want to do that? Do I want to be a builder? Do I want to be a flipper? Or do I want to be an owner? So tomorrow, I'm going to talk to you about real estate, and I'm going to talk to you about a system that I think is a way to go in terms of real estate and the stock market in terms of how to balance those things. So you're starting your money machine. Spend less than you make. You do that by paying yourself first. How much? You pick a percentage at the beginning of the year and you pay yourself that percentage no matter what. And that percentage goes into your money machine. Then figure out how you want to invest. Figure out who you are and what you're interested in. Do you want to own stocks? Do you want to own real estate? Do you want to own precious metals? Do you want to own all of these across the board, which I think is a good idea. But some people think, forget all that. I just want to be in real estate. That's Robert Kiyosaki. That's Grant Cardone. Oh, and by the way, Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey's great for getting you out of credit card debt. But if you think that you're going to build a big company without using any debt whatsoever, then that's really not how it works. The only way to build a big company is to use debt. So Dave Ramsey's great for individually getting out of, well, you shouldn't have credit cards and you shouldn't have cars. Okay, that's awesome. But in order to build a big company, you have to use debt. Nobody doesn't use debt, especially right now. Apple has debt. Apple has $1 trillion in cash sitting in the bank, and they still use debt. Why? Because it's too cheap. It's free money. So I'm redoing a building in downtown Freeport right now. Some of the money that I got, because it's a building built in 1850 and it's in a TIF zone. So, I mean, some of the money that was lent was at 2.75%. Well, that's essentially free money. So you have to, I'm going to take that money and use that debt and then take the money that I could have had to pay off for the building and I'm going to invest that in other places because I'm going to do better than 2.75%. So Dave Ramsey's great for getting you out of credit card debt, but as you start to build your money machine, you got to use debt. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to not use debt in order to, because debt is leverage. One of the greatest ways to create a cash machine in real estate is to use other people's money. to borrow money from other people, use that money as leverage to purchase big deals at the right time. And once you get a little bit bigger, you can make a ton of money in a short period of time. But that's using debt. So read Dave Ramsey if you're into Dave Ramsey. Get out of your own personal debt so that you're not, you want to become the bank, right? That's really where you want to head. The American dream is set up so that we help banks. It's not set up to help you. If you want to be financially independent, then you got to get the American dream out of your head. I built this big, beautiful house that I'm standing in. If I had learned this stuff before I built this house, I would have never built this house. Putting a lot of money into a house that you live in is the worst investment in the history of the United States. My generation, the X generation, which is completely disappeared from the national conversation somehow, was told that the American dream was to invest in the stock market because you'd be guaranteed a 10% return over your lifetime, which over our lifetime has not turned out to be correct. We were told to buy a house because it was your best investment. The average of a house going up across the country over the last 40 years, 2%. That's the average. Your home is a terrible investment. So when you're looking at how you want to become financially independent, you want to become the bank. The American dream was so the bank made money. The American dream was you get your dream house, you get your dream car, and you go into debt in both of those things so that you pay the bank. That benefits the bank. That doesn't benefit you. You want to become the bank. You want to be the one that owns things that other people pay you because you own them. Whether it's stocks or real estate or corporate debt, whatever it is, you want to become a bank. That's financial independence. So pay yourself first, start your investment vehicle, your money machine, and then we'll talk about systems, the system that I think is a great system tomorrow. But you got to decide where you're going to invest and how you're going to do it. In each of those buckets, there's different ways to do that. Stock market, active investing, passive investing. Real estate, active investing, passive investing. You invest or somebody invests for you. Corporate debt, bonds, active investing, passive investing. Precious metals, that should be active investing. And in that situation, you should own the actual metal and it should be in the safety deposit box at the bank. A lot of people keep it in their house. I don't know, that kind of freaks me out. So safety deposit box at the bank, now some people say, well, but if the world falls apart, the bank's going to drill into the safety deposit boxes and they're going to grab it. Well, I guess that's possible. I mean, if you're a survivalist, I guess, okay. But makes me nervous having, a chunk of precious metal sitting in my house. Up to you. Mine's at the bank. So if you want to steal my precious metal, you got to go to the state bank in Freeport and break into the safety deposit boxes. And that's where mine's at. So tomorrow I'm going to give you my approach, my vehicle, or my way of doing this that has worked. But for today, the main thing you got to remember is you got to pay yourself first. And then you got to put that money in something that it makes more money. That's the number one thing you got to start doing in order to have that financial independence. And remember again, I know I've said this, but it's worth repeating. Financial independence means that vehicle pays for your bare minimum necessities. Mortgage pays for your house, rent. It pays for your car, it pays for food, and it pays for utilities, and it pays for your insurance. Add up that number and write it down. That's the number that your money machine needs to make first. That's financial independence. Typically, that number is not that high, and you can get there, and you can get there in a short time. And being able to get up in the morning and know I don't have to go to work in order to pay my bills, I'm going to work because I want to, are two completely different feelings. And that's the feeling that you want. Have a great Thursday, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.